Thank you for listening to this sermon from Valley Life Church. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to our website at valleylife.church, or better yet, come be our guest on a Sunday morning.
I promise that at the end of this message, somewhere near the end of the message, I will give you good news. I promise I will. But first we begin like this. This week I've been thinking about our nation, the United States of America, and how far we have fallen. And I typed that into a Google Doc, and you know how it'll try to finish the sentence for you? I could have hit space and it would have finished it for me. How far we have come. And I wish it were true. But I've been thinking about how far we've fallen. How far we have fallen reminds me of sometimes, I've heard of this a few times, when some young married couple puts their family together and they're trying to live for God, but one spouse may cautiously or carefully introduce some pet sin into the mix. It might be pills or porn or pride or whatever it is. It's nothing egregious or boundary pushing. They just are trying to stay relevant to the other couples that they hang out with. And then one sin leads to another and to another. First the wife, and then the husband follows, and then the wife again. Or maybe it was the husband introducing the idea, and then the wife follows, and then more and more and more. And one day they wake up, and the whole family is mired in wickedness. And their children don't know God. The family's completely estranged from any church that they could call their own. And the sins who were once pets are now out of control, and it's gone too far. And very often, when I've seen this, one of the family members will say something like, "Hey, this isn't who we are." And the other will answer with more honesty, "This is literally who we are. And this is who we have been for quite some time." And I feel that way about our nation. This week, a Manhattan jury found President Trump guilty of falsifying business records in the case stemming from hush money payment to porn actress Stormy Daniels during the 2016 presidential campaign. And just the charge itself is a stain on our people. The president and a porn actress. What an embarrassment. And to make the whole thing stink even more in the nostrils of our God, we have a major political party in America maneuvering to eliminate their biggest political threat through what some people are calling judicial warfare. And many people are lamenting, this isn't who we are. It's literally who we are. And it's who we have been for a long time. They say, this is a banana republic. What is going on? It's been this way for some time. And not coincidentally, I say that with pastoral editorial authority. Not coincidentally, it's Pride Month in the United States and around the world. If you don't know, Pride Month is an annual celebration held in June to honor and recognize LGBTQI plus community. That's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and others community. And of course, the corporations are all about it. I'm sure you've got the emails. But our government is all about it. This from the Department of Education Twitter feed today. The Department of Education. This, the official Twitter account of the White House. And President Joe Biden tweeted or X'd, I don't know how to say the verb, it's X now. These words: Pride is a celebration of the generations of LGBTQI plus people who have fought bravely to live openly and authentically. Happy Pride, everyone. We are under the judgment of God. This nation is under the judgment, or we had better be. We'd better be under the judgment of God. If not, then our God is not forever like himself. So today we look at the oracle concerning Tyre and Sidon. Tyre and Sidon are sister cities, city-states, ancient city-states, and the region around them is called Phoenicia. And as I started getting ready for Phoenicia, and I live in Phoenix, I had to think, what's the connection between Phoenicia, the ancient place, and Phoenix, Arizona? Well, if you ask ChatGPT, it'll say there isn't one. And I thought, well, that's not true. There's some connection. I did more research, and it all has to do with this color. It's like a dark crimson, red, purple color that a snail in the region of Tyre would produce. And you could extract a dye from that snail, and it was very valuable in that day. And they would export it out, and the whole region became known for the Greek word for that color, which is something like Phoenicia. And also, this bird, if you've seen this bird, some call it a firebird. It's also called a phoenix. In mythological lore, it's called a phoenix, and it's that color also. And when the founders of our city wanted to name this city, there were a couple different things thrown out. One of them was to name it after the bird, because it rose up from the ashes of another civilization, and it's named after the bird. The bird is named after the color. The area is named after color. It's all about this color purple, and I thought you should know that. Also break the tension of the Trump-Biden stuff. But now we can get into Isaiah 23, verse 1, and this is the oracle concerning Tyre, the major city in that place called Phoenicia. And as he writes it, just verse 1 just starts off, the oracle concerning Tyre. Now, I want you to think about this. It's sort of important to what we're doing today, that when Isaiah wrote this, that's 2,700 years ago for you and me. He's writing 700 years before Christ, so it's 27 years behind us. But when he was writing it, his version of modern day, Tyre was founded 2,700 years before that. So as old as Isaiah, the book, seems to you, Tyre, the city, seems that old to Isaiah. It's considered, if not then one of the longest consecutively inhabited cities on the planet Earth. And he's calling them to repentance. It says, the oracle concerning Tyre. Wail, O ships of Tarshish, or Tarshish. That phrase, ships of Tarshish, is a generic term for any big boat that does a really good job of commerce. In the same way you might say, I need a Kleenex. You don't care what the brand is. Just give me a tissue. That's what ships of Tarshish would be like. Just any big old ship. And it's saying, wail, the verb would be like, spend your time in mourning, any big old ship, for Tyre is laid waste without house or harbor. And the whole thing was the harbor. They started off exporting that snail dye and became a major empire of commerce, all about their position on the Mediterranean Sea and how they could get goods in and out because of their harbors. All the nations surrounding them, anytime you want to export something, that's what Tyre's for. That's how Tyre made its money. They didn't make their money just on snail dye. I'll stop saying that, by the way. But they did it for import-export. That's who they were. And since Tyre now is getting a judgment, he says, the ships aren't going to like that at all. Wail, O ships of Tarshish, the Tyre's laid waste, without house or harbor. And he says, from the land of Cyprus, it is revealed to them. Cyprus is that island out there in the middle of the Mediterranean. And it says, as the ships might be coming into Tyre, into the harbor, you got to go by Cyprus. And Cyprus already knows what happened. And Cyprus can tell you all about it. You can see this thing go down from Cyprus. It's been revealed to them. So the first verb is wail, the ships, wail. Second verb is be still. In verse 2, be still, O inhabitants of the coast. The merchants of Sidon who crossed the sea have filled you. And on many waters your revenue was the grain of Shihor, the harvest of the Nile. You were the merchant of the nations. So instead of wail, he says the merchants themselves should it's kind of like cover your mouth and keep quiet. This is an amazing, awesome thing that has happened. It would be similar to waking up, turning on your phone, and seeing that Wall Street has been devastated. And if you're a trader, just be quiet for a minute. The ships wail. The merchants are still. And then the sister city, which is Sidon, verse 4, are to be ashamed. It says, be ashamed, O Sidon, for the sea has spoken, the stronghold of the sea, saying, I have neither labored nor given birth. I have neither reared young men nor brought up young women. So first the ships wail, then the merchants are just supposed to be quiet, and this sister city should be ashamed because it has spent its life, its existence for money. That's what it's about. It's never been about giving life. It's always been about making money. And now that this whole thing has gone down, it seems so barren now. Eugene Peterson, writing about this verse, said it like this: hang your head in shame, Sidon. Sidon says, I've never had labor pains. I've never had a baby, never reared children to adulthood, never gave life, never worked with life. It was all numbers, all dead numbers, profit and loss. Barren. And then the focus shifts to the other nations. I mean, if it's all about import-export, Tyre and Sidon, Phoenicia, all the other nations who use them as a port are going to be affected. That's verse 5. When the report comes to Egypt, they will be in anguish over the report about Tyre. I mean, news does not travel fast in the ancient world. Eventually, word would get around the Mediterranean to Egypt, and they would realize, as they say Egypt was the breadbasket of the ancient world, being able to produce all that they produced, you got to get it out. And if we can't ship it through Tyre and Sidon, we're going to lose money. I mean, this is how markets work. So what happens when the lights go out on Tyre is similar to asking what happens when the lights go out on Wall Street. What happens when the lights go out on Bitcoin or short-term rentals or whatever it is? Or maybe all your wealth vehicles remain intact. It's just that the food supply is now broken. What happens? Verse 6, they're recommended. They get like advice from Isaiah. He says, cross over to Tarshish. Wail, O inhabitants of the coast. He says, I recommend you become refugees. That's probably your best bet. Verse 7, now it turns to mocking. So first, hey, here's how bad it's going to be. Here's what you should do. You should probably just become refugees. And then, what happened to your city? What happened to your big, old, rich, exultant city? 7, is this your exultant city, whose origin is from days of old, whose feet carry her to settle far away? Your 2,000-year-old ATM is over. Now it's just a subject of mockery. You know, we tend to have these nostalgic attachments to famous, important places, and we should. I'm not saying that's bad. But the way we think of like Paris or, I don't know, New Orleans, Istanbul, Cairo, they stand as old and important and full of culture and maybe riches. And to the Lord, they just go up and go down, and he doesn't see it that way. He lifts them up, he puts them down. The exultant city whose origin is from days of old, now people are just carried far away. Who did this? As we've gone through all of these God over the Nations series, these oracles against all the different nations that we've done, we try to say, well, in history, what was the nation that conquered them or laid them waste or whatever? Who did this? Tyre and Sidon, Phoenicia. Who did it? Well, the historical fact is everybody takes a bite out of Phoenicia. Everybody takes a bite out of Tyre and Sidon. The Greeks, the Romans, the Persians, Babylonians, Assyrians, they've all had their shot over the different centuries at Tyre and Sidon. But verse 8 and 9 say it's the purpose of God. God is the one that took the real shot at them. Verse 8, who purposed this against Tyre, the bestower of crowns, whose merchants were princes, whose traders were the honored of the earth. You're talking about princes and the honored traders among the whole earth. Who did this against them? Verse 9, the Lord of hosts has purposed it. And why would he do that? Now, what we have not seen is what Tyre did wrong. We don't see an accusation of sin because you did this or did this. You didn't keep my ways or walk in my paths. You got none of that. All it started off with is the ships should mourn, the places are barren, all this. We don't know what they did wrong. Here we find out their great sin against God, to defile the pompous pride of all glory, to dishonor all the honored from the earth. Why did God do that? Because they were proud. In his words, if you were able to respectfully ask the Lord God, why did you do that to Tyre and Sidon? I mean, it's true, if you look in some places in the Bible and in history, they did have a slave trade. They did kidnap people and own them, and that's condemned in the Bible. You may have heard that it's not. Don't believe that. In the Old Testament, kidnapping and man ownership is condemned. You can't do that. Tyre and Sidon did do that. And there's hints in there where they did all these business deals that they were cheating and stealing from the other nations, which we all know that stuff goes on in business. Seems like somebody's always got their thumb on the scale. But that's not what God said he did this for. He says explicitly, Lord, why did you do that to Tyre and Sidon? He said, to defile the pompous pride of all glory. Did you just want to dishonor them? And he said, yeah, to dishonor all the honored from the earth. Verse 10 says, cross over your land like the Nile, O daughter of Tarshish. There is no restraint anymore. He has stretched out his hand over the sea. We've seen that through God over the nations, where God stretches out his hand, and it's not good. It's a hand of condemnation. He stretched out his hand over the sea. He has shaken the kingdoms. The Lord has given command concerning Canaan to destroy its strongholds. And he said, you will no more exult, O oppressed virgin daughter of Sidon. Arise, cross over to Cyprus. Even there you'll have no rest. Real quick on that, there's 4 things there. Because they are proudful, because they are arrogant, God wants to dishonor them. And he says this, you're going to lose whatever joy you have, which is why that first line says, you will no more exult. Secondly, they're going to lose your power. They had all this power. And here he says, they're the oppressed virgin daughter of Sidon, so they lost power. They lost their home, which is why they're told to arise and cross over, go to Cyprus, that island in Cyprus. You're not going to be Sidonians now. Go to Cyprus. But even in Cyprus, he says, you're not going to have rest. Even there, you'll have no rest. You lost joy, power, your home, and you lost rest. Now, verse 13. In verse 13, I think what's happening in verse 13 is that he's saying, look what Assyria did to Babylon. Babylon was a mighty nation, but look what Assyria was able to get done to Babylon in war. And if that could happen to Babylon, then it could happen to anyone. Now, that's your pastor and friend Brian's interpretation of what's going on here. But a lot of the authors and commentators that I read said it's impossible to extract any meaning from verse 13. So I was like, I think it might mean this. I'll just tell the church. Verse 13 says, behold the land of the Chaldeans. That's the Babylonians. This is the people that was not. Assyria destined it for wild beasts. They erected their siege towers. They stripped her palaces bare. They made her a ruin. A very complicated verse. I think he's just saying any nation can be taken at any time. This is all in God's hands. Verse 14, if you're with me, it's the same as verse 1. So he started off the whole thing by saying, wail, O ships of Tarshish. And he finishes up verse 14, wail, O ships of Tarshish, your stronghold is laid waste. So that's sort of like the full body of the document. And that is the oracle concerning Tyre and Sidon. And it finishes up for us our series called God Over the Nations. So we've done 9 weeks, 10 different places in 11 chapters of Isaiah. And if you say, well, what did we learn, class? Like, what was the church supposed to take out of these 9 weeks that we spent walking through Isaiah? What was common to all of these places? Well, I think, first of all, the name of the series, that God is over, he's sovereign over every nation. Just for fun, I thought I'd read off to you the names of the places that we've talked about. Babylon, Philistia, Moab, Syria, Cush, Egypt, Edom, even Jerusalem, and now Tyre. And God does whatever he wants to all of those places. It's like he holds them like marbles in his hand. And we think of them as ancient and powerful. And he says, yeah, so they rise and they fall. And I'm in charge of it all. Which is why, as Americans, we say humbly, as a prayer, God bless America. It's a request, a prayer. It's not a confident declaration that he's gonna. So the first thing we see is God is over the nations. The second thing we see is pride is an abomination. It's abominable. Pride, arrogance, conceit, a lack of humility. All the phrases that start with the word self, like self-righteousness, self-pride, self-esteem. He hates all of that stuff. Pride is an abomination. And if I asked you, does God hate? Does God Almighty have hatred in his heart? The answer is, oh yeah, he hates a lot. In fact, he's got a list of things that he hates. And it's in Proverbs chapter 6. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him. And the first one is haughty eyes. We don't say haughty much, but it's conceited, prideful, arrogant, thinking highly of yourself. With your eyes thinking that you look great, are great, and are above others. haughty eyes, he says, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. He hates it. They are abominable to him. And in Proverbs 8, I'll read these quickly. He says, pride and arrogance and the way of evil and perverted speech, I hate. God hates pride and arrogance. Proverbs 16 says, everyone who is arrogant in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Now, he doesn't say, I hate the arrogance in some people's heart. No, he said, that person themselves. Everyone who is arrogant in heart is an abomination. They are, he is, she is an abomination to the Lord. What happens to him? He goes, well, be assured he will not go unpunished. God punishes prideful people. I promise good news at the end, okay? Just hang in there. Luke 16, the words of our Lord, speaking to prideful people. In his day, you couldn't find prouder people than the Pharisees. And he tells them, the things that you have, they love their things. They love their money and the position that they had. They were able to work with the Roman government, and they were able to work with the Jewish people, and they were able to acquire land through that arrangement. They were prideful people. And Jesus said to them, if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? And in saying that, Jesus is saying, the things you have, you didn't make those yourself. They're on loan to you from God. You're a steward of everything that you have. They're someone else's. And if you're not going to be good with someone else's, who will give you that which is your own? And he says, no servant can serve two masters. He will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. They were trying to serve God and money. But if you have God and you have money, you will either love God and tell money to help out, or you will love money and tell God to get you more. You cannot serve God and money. And the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all these things, and they ridiculed him. They didn't just reject what he had to say. They made fun of Jesus for thinking that it's that way. And Jesus answered to them, said to them, you are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. For what is exalted among men is an abomination in the sight of God. What is exalted among men, God hates that stuff. And we've seen that over and over in all of the nations. Wherever there was pride, God hates it. So, our third thing we take away from all of these oracles against the nations, we've got to choose between grace for our sin and affirmation of our sin. Wherever there is pride, and this is a whole month of pride in our nation, wherever there is pride, you can affirm it or you can get grace for it, but you cannot have both. Grace only counts where there is sin. And if you're going to affirm something and say it's not sinful, you have excluded grace and mercy. So anyone that thinks, why can't there be mercy where there is pride? If it's sin, you cannot affirm it. If it's sin, it could receive mercy. This church is not a gay affirming church because it's not a lie affirming church or a hate affirming church or a pride affirming church, because those are sins and sins need mercy. And affirmation precludes grace and mercy. Almost all of these oracles that we've gone through, if you're looking for some common theme, they all end with a note of hope. When we went and saw the fall of Babylon, it said, but God will care for Judah through the fall of Babylon. And that week we said, God is creating answers to problems you haven't even imagined yet. And it was this note of hope. When we talked about Assyria and Egypt, we noted how they were the ancient enemies, the ancient rivals of Israel. But then in Isaiah it said, but God is going to take all three of those nations and make them brothers, and they will all worship God together. All these oracles end with hope. So how does the oracle against Tyre and Sidon, the prideful people in Pride Month, how does it end with a note of hope? Well, it's this, verse 15. In that day, Tyre will be forgotten for 70 years, like the days of one king. And at the end of 70 years, it will happen to Tyre as in the song of the prostitute. Now, that's either a song people knew or something Isaiah just wrote, but it goes like this. Take a harp, go about the city, O forgotten prostitute. Make sweet melody, sing many songs that you may be remembered. Now, that song sort of seems like this prostitute used to make money by prostituting, and now she's in her 70s, and she can't do that anymore, so she takes up singing. She goes around trying to get mercy from people, singing her song. And it says in verse 17, at the end of 70 years, the Lord will visit Tyre, and she will return to her wages and will prostitute herself with all the kingdoms of the world on the face of the earth. And if you're thinking, that doesn't sound good, nope, that's not good at all. And what happens in verse 18 is this huge shift. It's some kind of a conversion experience that Isaiah is predicting is going to happen to, metaphorically, to this prostitute, but literally to Tyre and Sidon, the people of Phoenicia. And it sounds like this. Her merchandise and her wages will be holy to the Lord. It will not be stored or hoarded, but her merchandise will supply abundant food and fine clothing for those who dwell before the Lord. Just so you know, those who dwell before the Lord are the priests. He's saying that money that's coming through Tyre and Sidon will end up in the temple of God. This is a conversion story. So he's envisioning when Tyre is given to God somehow. And we've heard this before when we went through Psalm 87 and we saw it said Rahab and Babylon and Philistia and Tyre with Cush. God will say, this one was born there. It's as though they were born in Jerusalem. Even though they're Gentile, even though they don't have 10 commandments, they're not related to Abraham, they're not awaiting a Messiah, God says, I'm going to show grace through my son Jesus Christ and his death on the cross and his resurrection so that all the people of the world, including Sidonians and Phoenicians, can come and be in and be home. We will read about this in Isaiah 60, where it will say this specifically about Tyre. For the coastland shall hope for me, the ships of Tarshish first, to bring your children from afar, their silver and gold with them, for the name of the Lord your God, and for the Holy One of Israel, because he has made you beautiful. God did not make Tyre to destroy it. He made Tyre to save it. Now, the question would be, Tyre, the symbol of pride, and we, who have been like that for a long time, how can someone receive grace for pride if affirmation precludes grace and mercy? Well, in Matthew chapter 15, we see Jesus again, not in Jerusalem, but up north. We keep seeing him up north as we've gone through all these different nations. And Jesus is up north again, out there where the Gentiles are. Not the people of God, not the people of the 10 Commandments. He's up there in Tyre and Sidon. And he's hanging out. In verse 21, it says, Jesus went away from there and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and was crying, have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon. Just to set the whole thing up, this is one of the descendants of those people that Isaiah was prophesying against. She's Sidonian or Tyrian. She's Phoenician. She doesn't have the 10 Commandments, but she knows he is called the Son of David. And she's not saying she's a daughter of David. She said, I know I'm on the outside. You're a son of David. I got problems. All I'm bringing to you is not what I'm proud of. It's not why I deserve to be here. I'm asking for a favor over here. I'm asking for mercy. I'm asking for grace. My daughter's severely oppressed by a demon. But he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and begged him, saying, send her away, for she's crying out after us. The disciples always think everybody's so annoying. And I do wonder if Jesus is like, you are just like them. And he answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Jesus said, I'm the Jewish Messiah. And I was sent to these Jewish people. I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But she came and knelt before him. I mean, she's up in the ante, up in the emotion. She knelt before him and said, Lord, help me. I mean, that's a plea. That's a God bless America, please. Lord, help me. And he answered, it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Which, that sounds kind of offensive. I'm offended for her. It's not right to take the children's bread, the Jewish teachings for the Jewish people, the Jewish Messiah, and just give it to a Sidonian, give it to a Canaanite woman, give it to what we call Gentile, not Jewish. And she wasn't going to let it go. She did not say, how dare you? How dare you? You should affirm the way I grew up. And no, I didn't grow up with your 10 commandments and your privilege, but you should affirm me. Nope, she didn't do that at all because she had a greater need than she had pride. And she said, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat crumbs that fall from the master's table. And Jesus said, oh, woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desire. And her daughter was healed instantly. Our only hope as a nation, as I see it, is the same only hope for any person inside of this nation. And it is because affirmation of our sin precludes us from grace and mercy, we must be not proud. We must say, we are in need. We have nothing to bring. We're not proud. We only bring our need. And we only need crumbs from the master's table. And if we bring that to him, he will give us grace and mercy.
Hi, it's Pastor Brian, and I hope this sermon is helping you become good, glad, and strong in your faith. But remember, there's just nothing like being a part of your own local church. So if you're in the North Phoenix area, you should join us this Sunday. And if you do, make sure you find me and say hello. And if you're not in North Phoenix, our team would consider it a real honor to help get you connected to a church near you. Just email us at hello@valleylife.church, and we'll do our very best to help you out. Now, you can always find more podcasts, community groups, service opportunities, and even a giving link on our app and on our website. Press on.